wholeness, wholeness and balanced vibrations. It's MysticMommyy, and today we are doing the Kybalion Chapter 1 summary and commentary by me. And so yeah, let's get started. Chapter 1. This chapter is titled The Hermetic Philosophy, and it starts with the quote, "The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding," end quote. The Kybalion. So it starts out I feel like, first of all, let me just say, I feel like this chapter is low-key just a reiteration of the introduction. So if this is like a lot of review, I'm sorry. It claims the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings were birthed in Egypt, the place of the Sphinx and the pyramids, of course. So it's kind of still talking about that, and it's also just further expounding on how the teachings originated in Egypt and then gradually was spread across the world by, people traveling through Egypt, those who have conquered Egypt, travelers, things of that nature. People on their own spiritual journey is going to Egypt and learning. So it says here, nations that have borrowed this wisdom includes India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece, and Rome. Then it goes on to say, in Egypt was located the great lodge of lodges of the mystics. At the doors of her temples entered the Neophytes, who afterwards, as Hyrofants, adepts, and masters, traveled to the four corners of the earth, carrying with them the precious knowledge which they were ready, anxious, and willing to pass on to those who were ready to receive the same. And I did want to just touch on some vocab words in this chapter as well, just so that we're all on the same page with the terminology. So the first word I wanted to just kind of define was neophyte. And of course I'll have that spelled here. A neophyte is a new convert or someone who is newly initiated. That's a name that you would call someone who is newly initiated or newly converted into a secret society or some sort of mystical school or belief system or a religion or a cult or something, for example. Neophyte. The next word I wanted to define is Hyrofant, and that is a expounder of sacred mysteries. So someone who lectures or has talks about sacred mysteries, philosophies, things of that nature. You could say that Jesus was a Hierophant because he spoke in parables, you know what I mean? So that kind of thing. Basically gurus, people that have learned all of the wisdom, all of the teachings, and now they are going around spreading that information. Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to define the word adept, and that is one who is skilled in the secrets of an occult science. So that means someone who's been studying, spiritual sciences, psychic sciences, occult sciences, philosophy, and they are skilled in it. They are knowledgeable, they are an expert. They could also be a Hierophant. So it's just like, these specific terms for those who went through the mystical schools and learned the knowledge and went on to teach it. Okay, And so we go to the next page here. So then they go on to talk about Hermes again. So we're talking more about Hermes. I talked a lot about Hermes in the introduction summary. So if you have not seen that video, please take a look at my Coffee and Kybalion series, introduction, summary, and notes video. But we're going to go over Hermes again. So of course we're talking about Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great, the greatest great, the fount of wisdom, who is also known in Egyptology as the deity Thoth, or Tahuti, or Jahudi, depending on how people want to spell it. He was known as the god of wisdom in Greece, in Greek mythology, and also the scribe of the gods. It says here the date of his sojourn in Egypt, and that his last incarnation on this planet is not now known, but it has been fixed at the early days of the oldest dynasties of Egypt, long before the days of Moses. So basically, he's just touching on the fact that they can't really pinpoint where exactly Hermes, lived in Egypt, but they know that he was in, the very early stages of Egypt as a civilization. And then it also mentions here some of the Jewish traditions go so far as to claim that Abraham acquired a portion of his mystic knowledge from Hermes himself. Now that is an interesting claim that they're making. I haven't taken the time to look into that. Maybe we can do a separate video about that someday, because that's kind of interesting. Because, obviously, modern day Christianity and modern day Judaism, they're not going to sit here and claim that Abraham learned from Hermes, the great mystic. Obviously, that's not a part of the narrative, So, we'll have to put a pin in that one and come back to that. Here I just wanted to say, they believe that he lived about 300 years in the flesh. But besides him being known as the Master of Masters, they don't know much about his life. They just know that he taught in the mystic schools, and he was just known as this fountain of wisdom. And he was deified. Kind of like how, Jesus went around teaching people, healing people, and he is considered, God in the flesh, as we all can be if we want to walk in our highest self, our highest versions. Then it goes on to say how Hermes is the origin of the word Hermetic, or Hermetic Philosophy, obviously. So they named this philosophy after him. And Hermetic just means secret, kind of like how occult means hidden. It also means sealed, so that nothing can escape. And then it says here, I'll just read this whole little section here. It's not very long. It says, even to this day, we use the term hermetic in the sense of secret, sealed, so that nothing can escape, etc. And this by reason of the fact that the followers of Hermes always observed the principle of secrecy in their teachings. They did not believe in casting pearls before swine, but rather held to the teaching, milk for babes, meat for strong men, both of which axioms are familiar to readers of the Christian scriptures, but both of which had been used by the Egyptians for centuries before the Christian era. So what they're saying is that the Bible got that language from the Egyptians, and they know this because they've sat and transcribed the hieroglyphs and the Egyptian, the Book of the Dead, coming forth by day. And so yeah, that is an Egyptian proverb. Just like know thyself is an Egyptian proverb that has been basically misappropriated or appropriated, you know, by modern day pop culture or whatever. Then they move on to talk about how basically further expounding on why they keep everything secret, because they don't want their doctrine, or they don't want this philosophy to be turned into a doctrine like how modern religion is. So they're talking about the idea of how theology / Christianity came into the mystic wisdom and stole parts of their teachings, misrepresented them for their own personal religious gains or, you know, agenda between the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope and all of these, you know, organizations of power that are using religion as a way to control the masses and to have people voluntarily imprison themselves in their minds. So, this is something that happened between the early Christians and the Gnostics with the Roman Catholic Church. This happened in India and Persia. This happened in ancient Greece and Rome. And this also happened with the theologians of the Middle Ages. So over time, you look back in history and you can go backwards essentially and find that the origins all dated back to the times of ancient Egypt or Kemet, and in the mystic schools, the mystery schools that conducted their sciences in that age. Okay, so it says here the knowledge was rarely written down, but when it was veiled in terms of alchemy and astrology. So, Hermetic philosophy or Kemetic science is basically the foundation for modern day chemistry, astronomy, physical sciences, and there's one other one that I'm missing right now, physics. So yeah, so they veiled their teachings in astrology and alchemy and in these kind of parables so that only those who were truly searching would know what the real message was, whereas other people who were not ready for that type of knowledge would not be able to decode it. For example, how pictures of hieroglyphs from Egypt and ancient Africa can be misinterpreted by modern day Egyptologists because they look at things from a left brain perspective, when Africans and melanated beings primarily are dominated from the right side of their brain, and therefore they look at things more intuitively, more abstractly, and in wholes versus being more logical and analytical and separating and sorting things out. So it's kind of just like different perspectives, and so that's kind of how they veiled their knowledge, because they knew that if you weren't about that life, basically, it would just go over your head, or you would think it's stupid. Okay, and so I'm just going to quote this to reiterate what they're trying to drive home in this, on this page, which is basically their whole little cult or like mystic school was sworn to secrecy. And it says here, this because of the warning of the ancient teachers against allowing the secret doctrine to become crystallized into a creed. The wisdom of this caution is apparent to all students of history. The ancient occultism of India and Persia degenerated and was largely lost owing to the fact that the teachers became priests and so mixed theology with the philosophy, the result being that the occultism of India and Persia has been gradually lost amidst the mass of religious superstition, cults, creeds, and gods. So it was with ancient Greece and Rome, so it was with the Hermetic teachings of the Gnostics and early Christians, which were lost at the time of Constantine, whose iron hands smothered philosophy with the blanket of theology, losing to the Christian church that which was its very essence and spirit, and causing it to grope throughout several centuries before it found the way back to its ancient faith, the indications apparent to all careful observers in this 20th century being that the church is now struggling to get back to its ancient mystic teachings. So yes, it just continues going on and on about how they did not share this information with anyone outside of their little system of learning. And then it starts to just talk about the original Kybalion and its like original script, and how it was basically just a compilation of maxims and axioms, which were kind of hard for the common person to understand. Again, they only wrote things in like a code or like a veiled type language so that it would not be understood by most. And then I just wanted to define maxim and axiom for those who may not be familiar with those terms. Maxim is an accepted proposition serving as a rule or guide. And an axiom is a statement of self-evident truth. And then I just wanted to give an example of some maxims or axioms that were in the Kybalion. Quote, "Where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teaching open wide." End quote. And quote, "The ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom." End quote. And so yeah, in a nutshell, that's basically chapter 1. It's basically an expansion on the introduction. We haven't really gotten into any of the meaty parts of the book yet, but in the next chapter, chapter 2, it will give a very brief little synopsis of each principle that the rest of the book will be covering. And so that's when we kind of touch on the good stuff. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, a comment. I'd love to sit and chat about this book with anyone who might be interested. Share this with someone else that may be interested in ancient wisdom and knowledge, occult science, Kemetic science, Hermetic philosophy, and yeah. Peace out.